All right. Yeah, okay. I wanted to touch on this thing because I was reading Guru Vachaka Kovai, I think. Garland of the Guru sayings from Ramana. Somewhere in some of the first, I don't know, 300 verses or something, he talks about false God. And I love that because in the 12 steps, they also talk about you have to stop playing God, yeah? So, false God, at least as I would understand it, would be the head, the mental movement. Now, that mental movement is going all the time. Like when I used to drink, I hate people that would sit beside me and just like talk my ear off, you know? But in the bar, I could just move, or I could go to another bar and get loaded alone. This was my thing. I love to get loaded alone because nobody could bother me in that way, yeah? And then whatever, people would bother me. But anyways, you can move bars, you see, but once that's stopped, what starts talking off your ear is the mental system. It's going all the time. It's playing God, yeah, but it's a false God. This is also what I see when people say that anxiety is killing them. It's like the anxiety or the thoughts about future things that are coming is not killing them. It's the identification as the one who's anxious or the one who the thoughts arise to, yeah? That there being something there, you, I, which those thoughts are arising to. You see, but it gets to a point where they're identified as anxiety, yeah? So there's no concept that they can be free from anxiety without being free from anxiety as the anxious system. You see, they're never, you can't get free from anxiety as the system which is anxious, but you're not the system. Yeah, there's thoughts coming up about the future. Let's say they're anxious, and then there's an attachment or a grabbing onto those thoughts with the presupposing that there's something there, meaning I, you, me, this idea that is there that grabs onto these thoughts. So an anxious thought comes up and then there's a grabbing onto it. Yeah, you can see it happen. You can feel it in the body. When there's a thought grabbed onto, the body gets tight, you know? The space of what you are, the openness of awareness gets claustrophobic instantly, and then whatever that mental process presents, if it's in the habit of anxiety, which is this projection to the future, now I'm anxious, you see? So it's not the thinking or the movement, mental movement, it's the grabbing onto the mental movement. And it drives people fucking crazy. It makes them do all kinds of things that are completely unnecessary. Leave partners, change jobs, move around the world, jumping around, like all this, you know. I've seen this in my own life, man. Making a bunch of moves trying to solve the, let's say, discomfort problem, not realizing that the discomfort problem is being created by this grabbing onto the mental. Yeah. And then the mental, if you're grabbing onto it, it's looking out. It's going to rearrange life in order to make it comfortable. But that doesn't work because you can't rearrange life to your fitting and have it stay there if you can get it there at all in the first place. Oh, man. So you're essentially under the guise of this false god, yeah? And really, the head is playing God with life. It's dictating everything that's happening. It's trying to understand it, which it can't do. Mostly, it's misdictating or misunderstanding and misinterpreting everything that's happening because it's part of your own programming on how you're interpreting what's going on. So the anxiety is, we're in the age of anxiety. It's like, this is what's killing everybody. And then they try to get out of the anxious system as the anxious system, and it doesn't work. It's never worked, and it's never going to work. This is the craziness of that system, is like, some people I talk to have been, oh, I've been in therapy for 10 years and I meditate. The only thing meditating is going to do at that point is it might settle down the mental system, but as soon as that dinger goes off on the meditation, your head comes rushing right back in and you're just re-identified right away, you see. This is why I feel the non-duality message is super important, because it's not there's no problem with meditating or whatever. It's that after the meditation happens and the head comes back in with its anxious ideas, the re-identification happens right away, because people don't understand duality and how that mental system comes right back in to claim the experience of being the meditator. The same way when a thought comes up about the future, it's instantly claimed to be arising to you. Yes, and now you're seemingly not here anymore. You're only thinking about the future. And then you try to spend all of your time trying to get back to here, but as what's thinking about the future, and it doesn't work. You haven't left here. The spaciousness of awareness is here. It can't go anywhere. Yeah. There's a bunch of contents moving through that stillness, and we end up getting identified as the contents, because one of the things that comes up through that space is this idea or a sense of being the individual I, meaning this body. And then whatever arises seemingly in this body, like thoughts, are taken to be mine. Doesn't matter what the contents of those thoughts are. They could be absolutely crazy, which for a lot of people in recovery is the exact diagnosis of the problem. You're insane. Yes, but it goes far beyond recovery. And in today's world, there's so much stuff to make your head go wild. There's so much contents for you to get pulled out of your awareness with. Yes, there's phones, politics, media, whatever's going on in the world. Yeah, and then what happens is those things end up getting blamed for the discomfort that we feel, let's say. Yeah. You're not doing the blaming. These are all movements of the head. This is not like a personal attack on any person. It's just, this is what the head does. It blames externally, yeah. So then it's trying to change or fix the world, but it's seeing through the lens of the identification with the mental system. Oh boy. Oh, changing the world's not going to do anything, because as soon as the world quote unquote changes, which it's always changing, the head is just going to have another perspective that you're trying to now change the world this way or this way. It's duality, you know? This way and then this way and this way and then this way. There's never a fucking neutral ground that you can sit on. You are the neutral ground as awareness. But as phenomena which arises in that awareness, like music's always moving through space, you see? Thoughts are doing the same things, feelings, emotions, whatever, the idea of you. But the head turns all of that to say that it's happening to a you, to me. This is happening to me, yeah? As if there's a solid thing, which is a me. Now, most humans are identified me as this, the body, you know? As if this has a separate individual existence, which obviously it does not have a separate individual existence. Nor does the thinking, yes, nor does the emotions. They're not inherently autonomous. Yes, so they're reliant on this interrelationship with everything else. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just the way phenomena is, yes. But if you're looking for peace and freedom, you're not going to get it as an ever-changing thing which is interlaced with everything else. There's going to be no stillness there, obviously, because it can't be still, you see. It can't find a stillness. The stillness is pervading. It's before all of that movement comes into fruition. And it's free always from that movement. I don't know how I got off on that, but the thing was about the anxiety. Yeah, the head is trying to play God. It's projecting what's going to happen in the future by referencing the past and how you feel quote unquote now. This is the head using time, yes, to reestablish its dominance. And then it plays God with its ideas of this time. This is how it's going to be. I'm not in the right place now. It's because I did all this shit in the past. It's because my parents or grandparents or whatever, yeah. This is the head is doing all of these movements. because the head is in time. Thinking is time and space, But what we're saying here is you're before that. So when the head presents all these things which it's presenting, you see, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but when we're identified as it, it makes life very uncomfortable. I feel like I'm never here because the thinking is always in the future. Yeah. So then I spend all my time, okay, I'm going to get back to presence. I'm going to be present. But you're trying to be present, identified as what's seemingly never present. Like you're going to pull the head and sit it in the present moment forever. That's not going to work because the head doesn't do that. It's anxious. It's going back and forth, you see? You are what's hearing the head or listening, yeah? And then as soon as that idea comes up, I'm listening, but you can also hear that. You see, it's a stepping back. You see the thought, you see the seeing of the thought. And then you can really get an understanding of what your mental system is trying to do. How it's taking the contents of right now and morphing it into something else. In time, but very quickly. Yes? Once you see that system is misguiding you, you lose belief in that false God that Raman is talking about. You can open the hand on it. Will it disappear and never arise again? Probably not in my experience. The head keeps presenting all of these wonderful, quote-unquote, wonderful ideas. Yes, but they're not wonderful ideas, are they? They're misunderstandings and misinterpretations of what's going on. Right, stepping back to I am this body, or I am an individual, let's say. Because people say, I've been in therapy for 10 years or something. And there's nothing wrong with the therapeutic process, but you have to apply that shit to your life. And you have to do it every day. You understand? It's like, but if you're identified as anxiety, the therapeutic process won't really technically work. Yes, because you're identified as anxiety. So anxiety doesn't want to get rid of anxiety. It doesn't want to be rid of it. It's identified as it. You see, the head wants to, yeah, that's it, really. If you're identified with anxious thoughts and you go to therapy saying, I don't want to be anxious anymore, what's saying I don't want to be anxious anymore is the anxious thoughts. So then the therapist says, well, do this, do this, do this. Immediately the head goes, I'm not actually going to apply that because then I won't exist. You see, it thinks it's leading you to the idea that you're going to die, but you're not going to die because you're not the mental system. So if you let the mental system die in a way, let the anxiety die, you are not going to die because you're before it. Yeah, you're not the body and the mind. You're not the body and the mind. You're not the body and the mind. And then the head goes, there's an individual, me, I. Also, you are not an individual. There is no individual in there. Yes, these are all movements and ideas based amazingly on non-individuality. They're influenced by everything else. And then the head is claiming that to be individual, and it's not individual. There's no individual. Man. There's no other way. I don't know how I could. So if you go in to therapy identified as anxiety, and then the therapist says, do all these things, you understand? Let's look at this, you can do this and this and this, and the anxiety might calm down. As soon as an anxious thought comes back up, you're identified as it. Yeah, I don't see how you're going to get out of that anxiety in that way. It's because it's this identification with this hard identification with the mental system. Like that's how anxiety arises in my experience. Thoughts that come up, I believe those thoughts, and now I'm anxious about the contents of those thoughts. So that's the identification. So if you go into therapy as those thoughts, mm, if you go into therapy as those thoughts, the therapist is talking essentially to the one who's identified as those thoughts. Now, if the thoughts are constantly presenting future and they're making you anxious, wouldn't you have to begin to question the thinking process? And in order to do that, you would have to see that you're not completely identified with the thinking process, with the mental system. This is why I like non-duality, because it goes right to that. You are not the mental system. So when it presents an idea, it's getting presented, yeah? And we don't inquire into the idea, is the thought anxious or not anxious? We inquire into the before. Who's it arising to, yeah? Who's it arising to? Because it's the one it's arising to that grabs it. It's that idea right there. From open space, thought comes through, and then something grabs it. That's the identification, and that's the real monkey on the back in a way. It's like causes the system to get tight. Hmm. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling, but I wanted to mention it because I know people who suffer from it, and they spend tons of money and time on all these systems 10, 15 years, and they're living as the same, with the same anxiety and the same discomfort and the same pain. Yeah. But you can be free, right now. This is the message. Free right now, right here. And that's why I think the message is so powerful. Because you are before it, it's just, you're before all this stuff gets arisen. You're before it. And then we stop putting our faith or belief in this false God.